It's my great pleasure at this time to introduce our commencement keynote speaker, Arturo Casadevall, the Leo and Julia Forsheimer Professor and Chair of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology and attending physician at Montefiore Medical Center. Dr. Casadevall is a native of Cuba who emigrated to the United States when he was 11 years old. One of his first jobs in his new country was working at a local McDonald's. It did demonstrate his willingness to do the hard work, which, coupled with his brilliant intellect, led to his many outstanding achievements to date. He obtained an MD and PhD degree in biochemistry from NYU, trained in internal medicine at Bellevue, and in infectious disease at Einstein and Montefiore. He's authored over 580 scientific papers on topics related to infectious disease, immunology, and biodefense. He's been elected to a number of prestigious scientific societies, received numerous awards, including the American Society of Microbiology's Hinton Award for mentoring underrepresented minority scientists. And he's served nationally and internationally on important advisory groups, such as the National Science Advisory Board for Biosecurity. In recent years, he has published research on the practice of science, addressing important issues such as responsible conduct of research and hyper-specialization in research. His message, I am sure, will resonate with both our MD and PhD graduates, as well as with anyone concerned with the integrity of the scientific research enterprise. Please join me in welcoming to the lectern Arturo Casadevall.
Thank you, Dr. Spiegel, for your very kind and generous introduction. It is a great honor to be your commencement speaker. I have never given a commencement address before, and I admit that I thought for weeks about what to say. I read other speeches, and I wonder what the message to convey to you on this most important day. After considerable reflection, I decided to focus on the importance of lifelong learning and generating new knowledge. As graduates, today is a landmark day in your life. It is a day that may seem to mark the end of formal training, but actually, it is the beginning of what would hopefully be a life of lifelong learning. However, before going on, I'd like to pose a question to the audience. How many of you went to school to become an exterminator? Anybody out there? Well, I did. But I did not become an exterminator, at least not yet. Instead, I ended up in medical school where I enrolled in an MD PhD program and graduated on this same auditorium 29 years ago on a day pretty much like today. In fact, if you could travel back in time, this place will look the same. Our commencement speaker was Mayor Ed Koch. He was really funny, but I don't remember anything he said. I hope to do better. Although there were some differences in clothing styles, you could have gotten by with your current clothes without attracting too much attention. Have you been there 29 years ago? And I would argue that the greatest difference was that no one had a cell phone, and we'll return to cell phones later. When I climbed to this stage on that side to get my degree in medicine was a far cry from it is today. I will give you some examples from that day. AIDS was 4 years old. HIV has just been described, and the life expectancy of anyone with a diagnosis of AIDS was a matter of months. There was no diagnostic test for HIV infection. There was hepatitis A and hepatitis B and something called non-A, non-B hepatitis that was suspected to be a virus, but no one knew what it was. The cause of cervical cancer was unknown. Chronic myelogenous leukemia was treated with a noxious combination of anti-cancer drugs that caused serious side effects and rarely deliver a cure. Organ transplantation was a very specialized therapy that was carried out in only a few medical centers, and each operation carried huge risks in terms of organ rejection and complications from immunosuppression. Ulcers were attributed to too much acid and type A personality. I could give you more examples, but I think this will suffice. Today, 29 years later, HIV is a treatable disease for which there are almost 30 different antiviral agents, and most infected individuals can expect to live with lives with a normal lifespan. In fact, a few years after my graduation, an HIV test became available, and shortly afterwards, The first effective drugs against HIV arrived. In a very short time, AIDS went from being a lethal disease to being a manageable condition. Witness the fact that Magic Johnson was diagnosed with HIV infection 22 years ago and is alive today. Non-A, non-B hepatitis became hepatitis C, and within a decade, there were early therapies that have matured to the point that hepatitis C is now a treatable disease. Today, there is a vaccine to prevent cervical cancer, and one can envision a day when this disease can be eradicated. As for leukemia, new drugs such as tyrosine kinase inhibitors have produced such spectacular results that it is conceivable this cancer could be curable. Organ transplantation is now a relative routine procedure with excellent outcomes. Finally, as to ulcers, they were found to be caused by bacteria and can now be cured with antibiotics. How did we get here? Was it because some politicians passed some laws to make these diseases curable? Was it because the physicians in 1985 used 1985 technology and knowledge to make this progress possible? I think you know the answer to these questions is a resounding no. The progress was made possible because of new knowledge. You needed observant physicians and basic scientists working on these problems to make such progress. You needed basic science combined with clinical research to make the discoveries that translate into new therapies. You needed new knowledge, and that required approaching problems with the tools of science. To put this experience in perspective, we, all of us, have lived a very unusual life by the standards of human history. We have seen tremendous progress. I have seen tremendous progress, and so have you. Until recently in human history, people died in the same world that they were born. For example, the economy of Europe grew very little, perhaps by a percentage point, for the many centuries before the end of the Roman Empire and the High Middle Ages. Today, we expect quarterly growth rates of several percent and a hope for a better life in the future. How is this possible? It is possible because of the scientific revolution, which began 3 centuries ago and is still continuing. In fact, I would argue that the greatest problems that humanity is facing all require scientific solutions. Think about the things that could take out our species. Can you think of some? I'll give you 5 problems that pose existential problems for humanity. A rock from outer space, a new pandemic with an organism with high mortality, the faltering green revolution, which continues to provide most of the calories that humanity consumes, energy shortages, climate change. None of these problems can be legislated or litigated away, but each can be addressed with new knowledge and technology. The point that I'm making is that the future of humanity depends on a vibrant scientific enterprise if we are going to make it as a species in this increasingly damaged, overcrowded, and resource-exhausted planet. That is good news because humanity has evolved to approach big problems with new knowledge and that lead to creative solutions. Besides being lifelong learners, humans are remarkably curious. If one of those cataclysms that I mentioned was to befall us and cause us to disappear, I like to think that if another intelligent species discovered our remains, that they would conclude that we were curious and that we strive to solve problems with new knowledge. Somewhere on the moon and on Mars, there will be probes that will last for eons as a powerful testament to our curiosity. The curiosity of humanity resides in each of you, and each of you can nourish it and keep it healthy. Each of you has the potential to generate new knowledge, whether your destination is a career in surgery, a career in administration, bench research, statistical analysis, psychiatry, delivering babies, or any of the multitude of fields that are alive with medicine. You will have the opportunities to make observations that can translate into new knowledge. If each one of you goes forward and works to make your field better through the acquisition of new knowledge, you will leave a great legacy. Knowledge is a very powerful way to make things better. Unfortunately, science today is ailing from multiple maladies that include inadequate funding, high administrative burdens, workforce imbalances, winner-take-all economics, and a variety of systemic challenges. Our society, with its focus on short-term rewards, is moving away from funding basic science because its usefulness cannot always be articulated. Nevertheless, there is overwhelming historical evidence that transformative discoveries generally follow a passion for unraveling the mechanism of a curious observation or phenomenon. Now hold this thought for a moment while I get back to your cell phones, those that you would not have had in 1985. In 1916, Einstein proposed his general theory of relativity, which envisioned a fundamentally new vision of reality. The theory stemmed from Einstein's unfettered curiosity about the world around him. For decades, the theory of relativity provided no immediate benefit to anyone. In fact, Einstein would have been extremely hard-pressed to make the case for the usefulness of his theory in the world of 1916. Had he written a grant, that would be awarded based on significance, as grants are today, it may have failed to be funded. However, if you dial forward to the 1990s, you will see that relativity is essential to make your phone work because it relies on GPS, which in turn relies on atomic clocks that run at different rates on Earth and in orbit. There are innumerable other examples where inquiry into basic process resulted in transformative technology and a better world. If on the day that I received my degree, we had focused only on the knowledge and tools that were available at that time, we would still have 1985 technology, and that would have meant no cell phone, no HIV drugs, no vaccines against cervical cancer, continued antacids for ulcers, and none of the progress that you and I have seen. So as newly minted medical professionals and scientists, I urge you to support science, the scientific process, and research in any way you can. That means taking the case to your families, to your friends, and for physicians to your patients. Physicians can talk to their patients, as they talk to their patients, and in an excellent position to communicate how advances in medicine are dependent on research. While this is critical if a patient is a politician who can influence funding for research, it is important to do so with everyone, for everyone has a vote. If we are going to continue to make progress against disease and suffering, we need a healthy scientific enterprise, and that requires the support of everyone in this room. So let's go back to the business of exterminating bugs that I told you about at the beginning of the speech. When I was 19 years old, my father did not think that I was going anywhere in life, and he insisted that I go to school and get a pest control operator license. He told me that with $500, I could buy the tanks and some pesticides and start a business, and that I would just be able to keep it going by charging for exterminating. I could always make a living in New York City since there will always be roaches to kill. I did go to pest control school. The classes were held at night in a community college in Brooklyn, and some of my other classmates were inmates from Rikers Island, who usually arrive chained to one another. They were undergoing some sort of correction by learning how to kill roaches. I got my pest control diploma, and if you visit me in my office, you will see that I proudly display it on my wall. Why am I telling you this? Because I want to make the point that life has many branch points, and that the road to this podium was by no means straight or assured. In fact, I've been very lucky to have gotten as far as I have. In medicine, I specialize in infectious disease, and my research is focused on killing microbes. Hence, I'm indeed in the business of killing bugs, so you could argue that I did take my father's advice. Thank you, but just kept on going. So I end this address by urging and encouraging you to embrace a life of learning and committing yourself to generating knowledge. If you embrace lifelong learning and generate knowledge, I believe that the day will come when one of you will give a commencement address, possibly in this same hall, and you will tell the graduates that you remember a terrible time when many cancers were incurable, when elderly individuals developed dementia, and there were only a very few therapies for psychiatric diseases. When that day comes, I hope that you deliver the message that the day forward is to embrace lifelong learning and generate new knowledge to ensure that an even better world will be built with the tools of science, ethics, and investigation on the wings of curiosity and the human spirit. Congratulations again on your great achievements, and thank you for your attention.
Arturo, thank you for really a wonderful address. Thank you for what you do for our students every day, what you do for our faculty as a department chair, what you do for our institution as one of my most honest critics and wisest counselors, and most importantly, what you do to advance the cause of innovative science practiced with integrity. Thank you.